The 1995 constitutional order was crafted to unite and empower Ugandans. It carried the aspiration of turning Uganda's dark past into a hopeful future. 30 years down the road, the covenant stands at crossroads. The country is deeply polarized by politics and the uneven distribution of the national cake, compounded by tribalism, nepotism and cronyism, and to say the least, held together more by the barrel of the gun by the covenant itself. The lingering question is whether the constitutional order, or what legal scholars call constitutionalism, still holds, or whether it has been reduced to merely a subservient document for regime legitimacy. Encyclopedia Britannica defines constitutionalism as the doctrine wherein in the government's authority is determined by a body of laws or a constitution.
The software is that you have the law. The question is the law being implemented? Is the law being respected?
So constitutional law is important because for any legal system, the constitutional legal framework sets a standard and it sets the foundation upon which any other laws which are passed ought to be examined.
I say the Constitution represents the aspirations of the people of Uganda. And to me, it is really tragic that the very issues that we sought to break ties with are the same issues that are recurring.
On October 8, 1995, President Museveni hoisted the new constitution to the exhilaration of Ugandans who in the red document saw the rebirth of a nation and an end to the dark past that had afflicted post-independence Uganda. Ugandans had lived in uncertainty marked by insecurity, economic hardship and tyranny. The constitution was an outcome of the countrywide consultations by the Benjamin Odoki-led commission which gathered the views of Ugandans. The Constituent Assembly then spent 19 months scrutinizing, debating and drafting the covenant. Throughout its 295 articles, the Constitution, Uganda's supreme law, was designed as a blueprint for good governance, rule of law, human rights, democracy, accountability and development. It was incumbent upon the people of Uganda and their leaders to respect these provisions and treat the Constitution as a living document. 30 years later, experts say the gains made, while remarkable, are nearly outweighed by failures, among them the discretion of the text, but even more the departure from the spirit and hope the Constitution was held.
Extremely concerned that some members of the security forces are unleashing uncalled for violence. There is high-handedness.
He points out that the removal of presidential term limits in 2005 after MPs received inducements of 5 million shillings each watered down the spirit of the constitution.
The reason we have a constitution is to ensure that whatever is done to you is fairly predictable. So that if a police officer stops you, you expect that the police officer will start by identifying themselves. If they are saying you are under arrest, you expect that they'll tell you what your crime is. But here's a situation where now the famous drones just pick up people and take them to unknown destinations.
The prevailing state of affairs, grand corruption, poverty, social inequality, poor service delivery, unequal distribution of national resources, tribalism, nepotism, human rights abuses, land grabbing, forced displacements and institutional dysfunction points a starkly different picture from what was envisioned in the document once praised globally as progressive. And to this, the over-centralization of power in the executive, the militarization of politics, impunity and lack of accountability, all of which have grown in breadth and scope over the last 3 decades under President Museveni's rule.
Unfortunately, the problem comes when sometimes for political expedience or for political survival, the breadth, the spirit of the Constitution is then sacrificed for the convenience of our leaders. I'll ask you, for example, how many citizens do you know that have acquainted themselves with the provisions of the Constitution? How many citizens do we know who promote responsible parenthood, who promote the well-being of their community? So you can see, in essence, what I'm saying. Even the promotion of democracy and the rule of law is not for the president alone. It's not for the ministers. It is your duty as well as mine. Have they lived up to what they swore to do? Those who swear every 5 years, I swear to abide by the provisions of the Constitution and so on and so forth, and do solemnly affirm, have they done so? Because the Constitution is just pages, it's just documents of aspirations and so on and so forth. But those who implement, you and I, citizens, leaders, the led, and so on, have we done what it takes to realize the aspirations of this book?
I feel there's been a considerable success because we actually have a constitution that still exists. But I think it's important to know that the existence of a constitution is fundamentally different from constitutionalism.
That there were real efforts during the Constituent Assembly to see that citizens participated, they were represented, views were heard. But now, 10 years later in 2005, we see a process where it was amended to lift term limits. 2017, it is amended to lift age limits. All these processes, not fully consultative, do not involve all the participation of citizens. It's just done again to serve the whims of the executive. So that again has undermined. So as I said, unfortunately 30 years later, the aspirations of the Constitution that we sought have not been achieved.
The adoption of the Constitution was a defining moment for Uganda, a chance to chart a new future informed by the country's troubled history of conflict, political upheaval, oppression and tyranny. 30 years later, the jury is still out on what the future of constitutionalism in Uganda holds.